Now, a long time ago, well, not so long really, there was a little bird who lived in the forest, a friend of mine, called Billy Blackbird. And he got up to all sorts of adventures, which would like to tell you about. Especially now it's Christmas time, because something happened to him which was most interesting. He woke up in his nest one morning, and as he looked up, a piece of paper came floating down from the sky and landed on his nest. He looked at it. There was some writing on it, but of course he couldn't read it. "Somebody has sent me a message," he said. "How interesting. I'll take it to Dr. Owl." Dr. Owl is ever so clever. Dr. Owl will be able to tell me what's on it. So took this piece of paper along to Dr. Owl, who looked at it and read it, and then he hooted a bit. "Hoo, hoo, 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 hoo," he said. "Do you know what this is?" "Well, it's a message from the sky," said Billy Blackbird. "Well, hoo, you could say that," said Dr. Owl. "It's a Santa Claus note." "Who's Santa Claus?" said Billy. "Well, he's a very kind old gentleman who lives up in the North Pole, and at Christmas time he comes around and he gives presents to all the children. And so before Christmas, some of the children send him a note, and they write what they would like him to bring. And then they put it up the chimney, and the wind takes it, and then the wind carries it up to the North Pole. Well, it should do, but it looks as if this one has gone astray." And so he began to read it. "Dear Santa Claus, I would like a cuddly doll for Christmas. Lots of love, Mary." "Ooh, ooh," said Dr. Owl. "We must see that this note gets to Father Christmas. It's got lost." And now Billy Blackbird was most interested. "Did you say he brings presents to the children at Christmas?" "Oh, that's right," said Dr. Owl. "Yes." "But does he bring presents to the birds?" "Oh, I'm afraid not," said Dr. Owl. No, he's ever so busy, you see. It takes him all night to take presents around to the children. He just wouldn't have time to take presents to the birds as well." "Well, I don't think it's fair," said Billy Blackbird. "Presents for the children, and no presents for the birds. Are children more important than birds? I'm going to tell Father Christmas what I think of him." "Hoo, hoo," said Dr. Owl. "You'll have to go a long way if you're going to tell him what you think of him." "I don't care," said Billy Blackbird. "I'm going to tell him." "Well, it's a long way right up to the North Pole, and he lives in the ice castle, and it'll be cold up there." "I don't care," said Billy Blackbird. "I'm going to tell him that it's not fair." "All right," said Dr. Owl. "If you've made up your mind, take some food and fly north towards the pole star. Keep going, keep going. It'll get colder, and then at last you should see the ice castle." So Billy set out the next morning early with a bit of food on his back, and he flew up north. It got colder and colder as he flew along, but he kept going. He had to stop one night up in the north, and set off again the next day. And at last, in the distance, he saw the ice castle twinkling in the sunlight. Oh, it did look beautiful. A magic castle if ever there was one. And when he arrived at the castle, perched on the windowsill, one of the windows was open, and so in he went. And there was the most jovial man you could ever imagine. He must have been ever so old, because he had white hair and a white beard, and yet he skipped around as though he were a 2-year-old. Ho, 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 he said. Come along, elves, he said. We've got a lot of work to do, only a few days to go. Ho, ho. We mustn't be late, you know. And then he saw Billy Blackbird. Ho, 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 he said. We have a visitor. And who are you? I'm Billy Blackbird, he said. I've come from the village forest, and I've come to... He was feeling quite nervous. I've come to tell you that I don't think it's fair. Oh, what's not fair? Said Father Christmas. I don't think it's fair that you take presents to the children and you don't take presents to the birds. With that, Father Christmas looked very sad. Yes, he said, I'm sorry about that, because birds are so important and they sing so beautifully. They deserve a present, but I just can't do it. It takes me all night to get around the children. All night. And I'm exhausted when I finish. I'm ever so sorry. Billy Blackbird thought for a minute, and then he had an idea. You've got to be careful of Billy Blackbird's ideas. Perhaps I could help you, he said. You? Who? Yeah, perhaps I could take some presents and give them to the birds on Christmas Eve. Father Christmas stroked his beard and looked very thoughtful. And then a twinkle came in his eye. A brilliant idea, he said. Ho, ho, I like it. Yes, you can be my Billy Christmas. So you shall. And with that he snapped his fingers, and one elf came and he whispered something to him, and the elf came back with something for Billy Blackbird to put on his head, like that. Ho, ho, said Father Christmas. Now you really are Billy Christmas. Now, I'm going to ask the elves to prepare a sack full of presents, little packets, and in each packet will be a nut and a sweet and a cherry. And then on Christmas Eve, after the birds have gone to sleep, you can fly around the forest and put a little packet in every bird's nest. Oh, Billy thought this was a marvellous idea. Oh, he drew himself to his full height, feeling so important. So he had to wait for the elves to get the presents together and put them in a sack. And then Dr. Owl snapped his fingers again, and he whispered again to the elves. And they took Billy Blackbird outside the ice castle, and there was the Eagle Express waiting with great wings outstretched. The Eagle Express was going to take Billy all the way back home. Didn't take the eagle long to get back to where Billy Blackbird lived in the village forest. Dropped off the bag, dropped off Billy, and said cheerio, and back the Eagle Express went to the North Pole. And Billy knew he had to hide his sack somewhere until Christmas Eve. And he thought, how will I know when it's Christmas Eve? Well, he asked Dr. Owl about this, just matter of fact like. And Dr. Owl said, oh, Christmas Eve, you'll know all right, because children will be singing down in the village, and at midnight the bells, the church bells will ring. So Billy hid his sack and he waited. The days went by, and then one evening he heard sweet singing down in the village, wafting on the evening air. It sounded beautiful. And then a little later, as it got dark, the church bells began to ring, and Billy knew this was it. This was his great moment. He waited till all the birds had gone to sleep. And then he went around the forest. Fortunately, it was moonlight, putting a little packet in every bird's nest, trying not to miss anybody. And when he finished, he put what was left in his sack down in a rabbit hole out of sight and collapsed into his nest, exhausted, and was soon fast asleep. He was woken up by shrill voices in the forest. "Oh, I've got a present in my nest." "And so have I," said another. "Oh, what a surprise." And then along came Tommy Thrush, his next tree neighbour. "I've got a present in my nest. Have you got one, Billy Blackbird? Go look." Said Billy Blackbird. Yes. And they looked around Billy Blackbird's nest, and there was no present. "Oh dear," said Tommy Thrush, "you've been missed. Whoever it was brought these presents missed you. Fancy that." Never did know why Billy was missed. But you know, don't you? Billy was so busy looking after all the other birds that he forgot himself. Which I suppose is the spirit of Christmas, isn't it? To think more about other people than we do about ourselves. And of course, God was thinking about us when he sent Jesus to us at Christmas time. Do have a happy Christmas, won't you? I hope you have more than a nut for Christmas.